Hello again everybody, hope you're all doing well, and welcome to episode 1 of what I'm going to be calling the Workshop Diaries. So for those of you who don't already know, I do have my own little motorcycle repair business. It's been going for a little while now, but it is still quite a new business and it's a very small business, it's just me. But basically, as you know, the motorcycle repair part of it tells you, I fix bikes. I fix any bike. I do have a lot of experience from, working in other garages, working on sports bikes and dirt bikes and things like that. But I do specialise mostly in scooters. And in particular, I specialise in Chinese scooters, mostly because nobody else around here seems to want to touch them. So it's a bit of a gap in the market. I personally don't care. I'm happy to work on anything that's got an engine and wheels. So, I'm not prejudiced. Therefore, I can earn a decent amount of money fixing all the bikes that other garages don't want to touch. Because, it is true, these Chinese scooters, for various reasons, do need a lot more work doing to them. To be perfectly honest, it's mostly because people just don't look after them, but whatever. But that's good for me. Like I say, in the area that I live in, it's a bit of a gap in the market. So the purpose of these videos, I'm not going to be doing like tutorials. I do have other playlists with tutorials of how to do things. This will just be showing you guys the kind of things that I come across, showing you some of the problems that I come across on these bikes and the sort of things I end up fixing. So today we're working on I don't know what the hell, this particular bike. You'll recognize it from the front. It's that generic Chinese scooter. I really don't like the design of this particular one. It's, I think, quite ugly, but personal preference. But usual thing, it's sold under many different brands and whatever else. What's important is it's a 125cc, it's got that generic Chinese copy of a Honda GY6, so it's real simple engine, real easy to work on. And to be perfectly honest, these things aren't too bad. If you just want something to pop into town or something on and you're not requiring it for long trips or anything like that, they're actually okay, as long as, number one, they're set up properly, and number two, they are actually looked after. This is the most common thing. It's a generally accepted thing that as a Chinese scooter, it's cheaper, the materials are cheaper, everything else is cheaper, and there is always the chance that things are going to break or be more likely to break because of them being cheaper. But that doesn't have to be the case. They can actually be absolutely fine. It's just something you have to be aware of. Some parts may wear out because they're made of cheaper materials, but you've got to remember they're also a lot cheaper to replace. So, swings and roundabouts. But commonly, one of the most common problems is parts wear out on these things quicker because people just don't maintain them. And today I have a really good example of that for you. So if we come over here, this engine, as you can see, is currently in a state of disassembly. I've got the head over here and whatever. And the reason for that is because this one is having a camshaft replacement. So the story, it goes like this. Customer brings it in and basically says, okay, it's having some running issues, it's very hard to start, and there's fuel leaking out of it. So the first thing I look at is the fuel system, and I realised that the fuel hose was cracked and whatever else and was leaking fuel. So obvious solution to that, brand new fuel hose, brand new fuel filter, job done, one would have thought. Go to fire it up and it runs like an absolute bag of dog dirt. And I'm thinking, well, I wonder why. So I end up doing some investigation. I look for spark, we've got good spark. I look for the valve clearances, and they're a little bit on the tight side. Another common thing I find with these, quite often, I'll get, especially the 125s will come in and I'll check the valves and they'll be too tight. I'll adjust them to the correct specification and suddenly the engines run a lot better. A number of my customers have commented on how it's like they've gained an extra 5 horsepower or something just from having the correct valve clearances. So, that was the first thing I checked, obviously. So yeah, they were a bit tight, loosened them off a bit, got them to the correct specification. Still ran like a bag of rubbish. So I thought, okay, let's have a look at the timing. Had a look at the timing, and sure enough, on the camshaft, in fact, I will come over and show you. So these are the camshafts. We've got an old one and a new one. Obviously, you've got teeth where the chain goes around, and normally when you're timing these things, you would have it in this position. So you'd have this big hole at the top, and you'd have these lines parallel to the top of the cylinder head. When I looked at the timing, it was like this. So it was like a couple of teeth out of time. So I corrected that, tried to start it again, still ran like rubbish. I thought, well, that's a bit strange. So I stripped it down, had a look at the piston and the cylinder just to see if there's any like excessive wear or anything. But I wasn't expecting anything too much because this bike's only done just under 8,000 kilometers. Okay. So as I expected, I looked at the piston and the bore. It was all in really quite good condition, actually. I thought, well, this is really quite strange. We've got good, the right amount of fuel coming in. We've got good spark. We've got the timing correct now. It still doesn't run right. It runs absolutely horrible. So next thing I looked at was the actual camshaft itself, and I found two things. The first thing, so this is the one from that bike, the old one. So I don't know if you'll notice this on camera, but the bearing on this side is absolutely fine, no play. On this side, it's I can't really do it one-handed, but it's I don't know if you can hear that. It's got quite a bit of movement in it, and yeah, it's basically boogered. That is not a good bearing, but that's not even the biggest problem. The bearing being a bit buggered, okay, that's not great. The biggest problem is, let's see how well you can see this on camera. So we've got two lobes here. We've got one for the intake and one for the exhaust. I can't remember which way around, but it doesn't matter. And you'll notice the shape of them. They've got this like raised part. And again, I don't know how well you'll be able to see this on camera, but can you see the top of this? You can see these scratches where it's worn down, and you can also see that this part has actually started to get quite flat. Now if I compare that to the new one, again, hopefully you can see this. I don't know if you guys can see how this top of the lobe here is actually a nice rounded kind of teardrop shape almost. Now if we go back and compare that to the old one again, focus, you see how that's completely squared off? So that's obviously not great. That's worn down a bit too much. But that's not even the worst bit. It gets even worse, because if I show you the second part, so this is the lobe on the second part. And if I take you to the correct angle, hopefully focus, come on. Whoop. I don't think, yeah, there we go. I don't know if you guys can see, but it's almost worn completely down to nothing. And again, if I compare that to the same, so this then is the same lobe on the new camshaft, if it'll allow me to focus in. Oh, there it is. Oh, no. Oh, God, I'm not very good with this camera. Okay, there we go. No. Okay, let's try a different angle. Okay, well, from this angle, you can see how, like, it's raised up quite a lot. And now if I show you the same angle on this one, you see you can't even see it above the bearing, whereas on the other one you could. So it's completely worn. You can see, yeah, you see the difference, right? If I turn this like this, you see how this is like up like this, and I turn this to the same point on this one, and it's like that. Yeah, you see that? And then back to that one. Yeah, that's worn down to absolutely nothing. So it's no wonder it wasn't running properly. This is absolutely knackered. So why is that? Why would that be completely knackered? Because if it's only done under 8,000 kilometers, that shouldn't be so worn, should it? Well, I'll tell you exactly why. Because it's never had an oil change. In fact, I'm pretty sure this thing's still running the same crap that it was actually shipped with. Now, one thing that should be noted is that with these Chinese scooters, they ship the scooters and the engines filled with oil to, I think it's just to protect the internal components or something. But the oil that they ship it with is not proper engine oil. It's just some, like, I don't know, vegetable oil crap or something. It's just I don't know exactly what it is, but it's not meant for running it. They even say, like, when you get a brand new boxed Chinese scooter come in, first thing you need to do is change the oil before you run it, because what it's shipped with is not engine oil, or it's not the proper engine oil. It's just a oil for shipping. I think it might even be something to do with the fact that they're not allowed to actually ship it with proper engine oil in it because of the chemicals or something. I don't know. I'm not an expert on shipping of various things. All I know is the oil that comes in these things when they're shipped is not the oil that you should be running in them. But this, yeah, the oil in it is ultra thin, ultra black, full of crap and rubbish, and it's obviously never been changed in the nearly 8,000 kilometers it's done. And also it's quite low on oil. It's only got like a little, maybe a quarter of what it should have in it. So, because it's not had enough oil, it's not had enough lubricant, so parts have obviously rubbed against each other without enough lubrication and become worn, and we find ourselves in this situation. But going back to parts being cheap to replace, this normally would be a big deal. I mean, whole camshaft on any other vehicle would be a huge expensive thing. You probably write off the motor, depending on what motor it was and whatever else. Then you might not even bother trying to replace this. But luckily, because this is Chinese and because it's nice and cheap, a new one of these will only set you back about 15-20 quid. So happy days. Obviously, there's still the labour on top of that, but the the amount of labour involved in taking apart a small single-cylinder four-stroke is relatively small, so it's not a particularly expensive repair. Hence, it's actually worth doing. Obviously, Chinese scooters, if the repair bill starts to get too high, you start to question whether it's actually worth bothering with because it's not economically viable. But a lot of the times it is, because the parts are so cheap, you can just, get that stuff sorted. So, what we're going to do for this gentleman is obviously put this nice shiny new camshaft in. We've also got a nice new set of rollers because, as it's never had a service, the rollers, you can see, are nice and flat. Where's the focus? There it is. You see that nice big flat spot on there? It's lovely, isn't it? So we've got some nice new rollers for him. Standard weight. I'm not messing around with changing the roller weights or anything. He's got the new fuel line on there, so that solves the original problem. And we've got a nice fresh bowl of oil standing over there, ready to go in the engine as well. So hopefully by the time we've done all of that, this should be running lovely and he can go back to using it. Now, this guy, he only does use this for short journeys just from the village to the local town, so this little Chinese scooter is the perfect vehicle for him. So he'll be, I hope at least, very happy that it will be finally running nicely. So there we go, guys. That'll do for this video. I just wanted to show you guys what I've been working with today. And as I say, I'm going to be doing this will be the first part of like a series of just anytime I come across some interesting like repairs that I end up doing, or I find something interesting on a customer's bike, I will do a little video and add it to the Workshop Diaries playlist. I don't just work on Chinese scooters, I do work on normal motorcycles as well. I've had a number of dirt bikes in as well, because I've got a friend of mine, he likes to race dirt bikes, so I occasionally end up doing servicing and stuff like that on those as well. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do give it a like. If you haven't already, go subscribe to the channel, check out my other videos. I do have, if you are interested in seeing tutorials on how to do various jobs and things around bikes and scooters, I do have a variety of how-to videos in my how-tos and maintenance playlist, so you can go check those out. But for now, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you again soon.